The Brandon Peters Show may contain explicit language and detailed plot points. For more information on the show, stay tuned to the end of the episode. And now, here's Brandon.
Welcome to the Brandon Peters Show and the summer of 82 at, welcome to the Brandon Peters Show and our series we call Summer of 82 at 40. A weekend by weekend look at movies released during the summer of that year. As always, along for the journey from Forbes, it's Scotty Mendelson.
Greetings. How are you doing?
Not too bad, not too bad. It's going to be a great time talking about the weekend of July 16th through 18th, where we've got movies again, Scott. We'd had some weeks of one, a re-release that gets re-released this week, but we did it last week, which is Raiders of the Lost Ark. So if you just tuned into this one, you're like, but they re-released an Indiana Jones adventure. Well, we did talk about it the previous episode, getting ahead or whatnot. So
it's a reading.
Yes, you should start at the beginning of this journey, travel through it with us, watch all these movies because we are, or not.
If we
There's
must
some
suffer,
of them,
you must suffer as well.
we might be suffering for you for some of it. That's part of it. But thanks for tuning in. This has been a fun series. We're getting we're almost eclipsing the halfway point of July. Well, we're over half, but July we're
almost in Act 3.
We're almost to the final month here, getting here. But let's head on over to the news of the moment.
It's the news of the moment.
This week on July 12th, Britain announces it is returning 593 Argentine POWs. Good on you, Britain. Good on you. July 13th, the 53rd All-Star Baseball Game. The National League wins 4-1 at Olympic Stadium in Montreal. The MVP of the All-Star Game was Dave Concepcion from the Cincinnati Reds. A little more tragic, July 13th, a train crash at Altair, Belgium. 5 people were killed. Also on July 13th, Iran launches its first attack into Iraq. Here we are. July 15th, the body of Wendy Caulfield was found near Seattle. Who's that? She's the first victim of the Green River Killer.
Oh, my.
Remember that story. Yeah, that happened during this week. Oh, all sorts of fun stuff happening in the summer. July 16th, George P. Shultz is sworn in as the 60th U.S. Secretary of State. And in NASA news, that launches the Landsat 4 to the thematic map the Earth. Now, I gotta update the NASA section of this. We've been talking about the Challenger prepping stuff. That disaster does not happen until 1986, so it will not happen during the summer of 82 at 40. So it's all prep for that. I believe we'd hinted to that before, but I just like people to know that we know it's coming in 1986 and not 1982. No notable deaths this week, but we have a birthday. The birth of Priyanka Chopra, who you may know. I think she married a Jonas brother. Is that possible? I think that, yeah, maybe. Anyway, that's the news of the moment this week. That's what's going on in the world in 1982 this July week. All right. Let's go from that to what's going on in the Greek islands.
This summer, for the perfect vacation, without parents.
If you wanted a romance, you came to the right place.
Without pressure.
I can't tell you how this place turns me on.
And without wearing much more than a bikini.
You're a little overdressed.
We'll take your top down.
Take a few very close friends to see
You're very affectionate.
Summer Lovers. It's one summer you'll never forget. From Filmways Pictures, rated R.
Now playing at 49er Sunrise and Skyview Drive-In.
Our first film is Summer Lovers, directed by Randall Kleiser, the director of Grease. And this is, he also directed Grandview USA, Flight of the Navigator, Big Top Pee-wee, and Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. This is his follow-up to The Blue Lagoon, the guy who made The Blue Lagoon. So he wrote and directed this. He wrote and directed The Blue Lagoon. This is his follow-up movie to that. We remember we had Paradise at the beginning of this. Now the guy's like, get off my lawn. I'm going to show you where I go. With this movie, it stars Peter Gallagher, Daryl Hannah, Valerie Queneson, is that how you say it? Barbara Rush, and Carol Cook. It's about a young American couple and a French woman who engaged in a threesome in the Greek islands. So we got a couple return Summer of '82 visitors. Queneson, she was the princess in Conan. And this is the last film before her death in 1989. She died in a car crash. So there's that. Daryl Hannah was in Blade Runner, of course. This is a big year for her because she would also have a failed TV pilot called Paper Dolls in the same year. The original lead in this film was not Peter Gallagher. It was Dennis Quaid. Gallagher was his replacement. And they also, for the role of Lena, were trying to get, of course, Natasha Kinski, because she was she's got movies, but like you'd have think she'd been in a lot more with how much her name comes up during this era and in the 90s too, like in the 70s. Like she was a Natasha Kinski, like I guess she was just the poster child for exotic beauty back in the day.
She was a pinup.
Yes. And of course, Scott and I have talked. America loves it. Some young people fucking. So that's what we're back with this week. So Scott, well, your thoughts on Summer Lovers happen so fast.
So I got nothing. No, it's a fascinating picture in that, like a lot of these films, we're looking through the prism of are they good movies? But also, wow, this is a movie that you wouldn't probably see today.
I think you would.
At a certain mainstream level.
Okay, man, this would be this revelatory film nowadays.
It would be an art house picture.
Mm-hmm.
It would not be a mainstream,
right?
From the guy that made Grease, and will eventually make Big Top Pee-wee. And Honey, I Blew Up the Kid. That's an interesting filmography.
He got less horny as he went along.
Yeah, he did. Although Big Top Pee-wee certainly.
There's some.
Yeah, Pee-wee's got a hard choice to make. Let me just put it that way.
Burton's not coming back. Who do we get? The guy in Blue Lagoon and Grease.
Score. No, it's an interesting picture. It's pretty much face value.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't, and obviously, I think now, and even then, it's refreshingly not judgmental about its unconventional romance.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
It's the kind of thing that, in a skewed way, it's almost, I don't want to say boring about it because that's not quite fair, but it's very just sort of like you either go with this or you don't.
Yeah.
And I think in a fun way, the more entertaining scenes of the film are the ones where Daryl Hannah and Valerie Quinson sort of bond over their, mutual boyfriend, basically, and then become friends themselves.
Mm-hmm. Because the way Daryl Hannah's character reacts to this whole thing is first she's a bit upset, and then she's like, "Yeah, well, let me see what he sees in her." And I'm like, I guess I'll give this a shot. Like kind of the way she goes, and she's like, she actually, it flaunts his like hypocrisy and stuff in his face because she's like, "Oh, I thought you were interested in this woman. You don't know shit about her. Like, I actually have gotten to know this woman. Like, because he's trying to be like, oh, well, she's just so interesting and all this is like, nah, you're lusting after her."
Yeah. And watching these films just as a whole, it's always fun to see actors that I sort of know as sort of distinguished character actors when they were young enough to be young heartthrobs.
Right.
Not to give too much away, but there's another movie we're going to be talking about later today where someone that I know is sort of an elder statesman comedian but he is the male lead in this film, and the romantic lead as well, justifiably so. But yeah, this film did not get great reviews, but it wasn't like it was slut shamed or anything. It just, again, it's as just sort of the movie of the week. It's fine. It's well staged. It's well acted. Again, it's refreshingly not judgmental. But I think once you get past the wow, it's so progressiveness of it, it's sort of just, it's very matter of fact, for better or worse. I would say it's worth seeing as a curiosity if you're so inclined. I know you had to kill several people to get a copy, so I don't know how hard it is to track down legally. Yeah.
It was more it was more a case that I didn't want to. It was quite an expensive physical media purchase that wasn't available digitally, so I kind of.
You can cut that part out if you want.
Right? Sorry. Yeah, it's fine.
But no, it's the thing again. The thing that stood out to me is that it's very matter of fact in that it. I mean, right? The poster doesn't really hide what it's about.
Right.
I do. Again, it's sort of like you're right. This would absolutely be an art house picture, directed by the guy that made the Suspiria remake. What's his name? Call Me by Your Name.
Yeah, that's what I say.
I Am Love.
This would be the
Luca Guadagnino. I'm going to get canceled for that one. Yes, him.
Well, that's what I was just going to say. That I was just going to say this would be like if Call Me by Your Name came out and everybody's like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
Instead, it's like it's a big deal. Boys kiss, and we know who the actors are.
A bigger splash. That's what it kind of reminded me of a little bit. In terms of young hot people, or in this case, slightly older hot people, mingling in paradise.
It's got a location that's easy to on the eyes when you film it. Like the 70s and 80s Italy looks really beautiful when you see it. Like this Greek islands really lends itself. The only time where it gets that kind of weird, like, is when the moms come to visit and they're like, what's going on here?
But even that is handled with a certain.
It's quick and it's kind of funny.
Yeah. And it's almost refreshing that this unconventional romance doesn't end in violence.
Yeah. And right. You're right. No, it plays it straightforward. It doesn't try to make any bold strokes with it. It just kind of is like, this is how it happened. It was how it would happen or something like that. And
to my surprise, it ends with the film affirming that relationship.
Yeah.
It doesn't end by saying, okay, well, this was fun for the summer, but now we need to go back to the status quo.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting too. Like Daryl Hannah, she was like an it girl at the time, but she was not afraid to get naked, and getting naked in movies was kind of riskier back then.
Yes and no. I mean, we didn't have YouTube.
Right. I guess if you got naked in a horror film, it was bad. But if you got naked in something like this, probably okay. But yeah, she was quite like I said, she's got 3 projects this year, 2 summer movies and then a TV pilot. But this is kind of where she was at. And I just remember like she has a pretty lasting career as like a go-to pretty blonde girl and tall.
It's unfortunate she was one of those actresses, and there's lots of them that were mostly famous for being hot, which obviously limited their potential, both in terms of when they were leading woman material and when they aged out of that. Yeah,
true. It's this movie though. The thing is, like, it was very known for. I don't think people would know it for the soundtrack, but they would know the songs that came off the soundtrack because this is actually where we get for the first time Pointer Sisters. I'm so excited. Depeche Mode's got Just Can't Get Enough on here. Prince has a couple songs, but Chicago's Hard to Say I'm Sorry is the big one from this, and the band Chicago credits this movie with helping this get to number 1 on the charts. So
banger soundtrack as far as 80s movie soundtracks
go. I was watching this. I'm like, wow, nobody talks about this movie, but this soundtrack, and it's not like these songs were, because this was like, this isn't, we have a movie coming later in the summer It's a teen movie that the studio wanted to make sure they had a hit, so they went out and paid out the ass for the soundtrack. They were buying already hit songs to throw in the movie. This is the case where a lot of times back in the day, before soundtracks started booming, you just got B-sides and whatever thrown your way by popular artists. And maybe you throw one on the radio, but nothing was meant to be a huge hit or whatever. But this one got some hits out of it. Like there's some big stuff. Towards the middle of the decade, you start getting your Flashdance, you start getting your, oh wow, we can sell albums as well as, Flashdance helps.
Was Flashdance the first to really be almost as well known for its soundtrack as for the movie?
Yeah, it's one of them. It's one of them that started pushing like, hey, we can let's actually try to focus on making songs for movies good. And then you get kind of back to this weird so you start getting movies like, but the soundtrack songs were meant for that movie. The people wrote them, like they saw the movie, they got inspired by something and wrote a song for it. Some B-sides to get thrown in to fill out the tracks, but most of the ones that would be like the single or something had something to do the movie. Then you get about mid to late 90s and they just are like, let's just try to get a hit on there. Like
music inspired by the motion picture.
Right. I think like one of the last movies you get something that means some of the movies like Iris by the Goo Goo Dolls. And then, I mean, Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith could have been put on like 8 other movies. Like, yeah, it works. So
Hero from Spider-Man feels like the last, even though it probably isn't. At least in my recollection.
Right. But yeah, I mean, not to say they went away, but
song with Pirates of the Caribbean or The Matrix Reloaded or whatever.
Right. Matrix was a bunch of remixes, is what they did with things. But yeah, so this was a pretty sweet thing, and yeah, Chicago remembers this movie, but I don't know about anybody else. But yeah, it's just really Tina Turner's on here. You get it's a banging soundtrack, and the movie I don't know. I was weird. Like it's so nonchalant. But it's interesting to see this played nonchalant back then. Just like, it wasn't like played taboo. It wasn't played like, the moment where they all sleep together is a big moment, but that's because it's a big moment for the characters, not because it's like, look what we got on film. It's played big to their personalities, and that's interesting. But today this would be all played up like that. Like, look at this bold thing. Like, we were making movies like this back then, and not like having to be like, look, attention. It was just casual, and that's how people can progress too, without throwing it like, you need a change. I don't need a change. Like stuff like that. If you just and we were doing good and then like decent in the 90s with just regular diverse cinema, and then somewhere, you had to change, like, just sell your movie. People come to it, and then people come to it because maybe they sometimes feel guilty. Like, it's weird. It's backwards. It feels kind of backwards. Like we were going to movies. We had no problem, I don't know. Maybe because I'm someone, maybe I don't see as much because I was someone who would just go to the movies. Like, whatever. It looked funny. I don't care who, those people are.
It's when movies were cheaper and more varied, and, each film wasn't life and death for the studio. Yeah. They could just exist. Yeah. And as a result, you had a lot of, what we consider today would be progressive politics, sort of in a nonchalant way. Right. And I know I talk about this a lot because it annoys me, frankly, but we wish that we had blockbusters that were at least as aware of the political reality as, I don't know, Candyman, Farewell to the Flesh. Right. Yeah. Or Wild Wild West is always the one that I point to, which, it's not a good movie, but it is very upfront about, racism is bad. Racists use their racism to justify, violence against everyone. And that shouldn't be a shocking, controversial statement. But, now we have this weird trend for the last, 10 years or so, where every bad guy has a sympathetic moment that they want to do a good thing, a bad thing for the right reason, and blah, 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 blah. Exactly. And I get that from a screenwriting point of view. You want nuanced, complex characters, but, I wonder, is our movie-going audience smart enough to comprehend that in the correct way? I'm old enough to remember when movies like Naked Gun 2.5 presented the rich, diabolical Republican business tycoons that wanted to destroy the environment as evil because they wanted to destroy the environment, as opposed to movies where the bad guys want to destroy the world to save the environment.
Yeah. Well, that's my thing. Like the idea that it's always bugged me, like when people give about bad guys being bad, like they get mad, like because like the bad guy. I hate to use the word, but like the bad guys aren't woke. I'm like, they're bad guys.
Yeah.
Like I don't need to sympathize with them. I don't need to. I don't need it. I don't need them to be like that. Like they kill because they like kill people, and killing's bad no matter who they're killing.
I will say this, that Kenneth Branagh seems to have a market cornered on playing bad guys that are just dicks.
Yeah.
Wild Wild West, Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, Tenet, probably a couple other I'm forgetting here and there. But whatever my issues with those movies are respectively, I do respect that his villains are just douchebags.
Mm-hmm.
That they're evil just because they're,
right,
entitled, like often racist, just diabolical dickheads.
Yeah.
And
speaking of diabolical dickheads, our next movie is Six Pack.
He's already the country's leading recording artist.
That's real good, but it's still fat.
And a national treasure.
Oh, you always had an interesting way of saying hello.
Now, 20th Century Fox proudly presents Kenny Rogers in his first major motion picture, Six Pack.
You race car driver, mister?
Used to be. Might have been again if I hadn't run into you guys.
He's Brewster Baker, a dirt track demon whose racing career was going in reverse. Until he ran into 6 pint-sized grease monkeys.
Hey, turn it over!
Hey, Bruce, what do you pay your crew with? All-day suckers?
Kiss off, mister.
They're determined to help him.
All clear?
In their own special way.
What did you do to the car anyhow?
Count off, Harry. 10, 9, 8. 1.
Out. Everybody out.
We was only trying to help.
Hey, stealing is stealing, pal, and I don't want any part of it, okay?
You yellow belly, gutless slut.
Brush up the same mouth you eat out of.
You no good, rotten, blood, stuff, fork-tailed, black-hearted, double-billed bum!
What did that kid do to this thing? Oh, no. Look who's back. Maul Barker and her boys.
We got no choice but to stick with you till a better thing turns up.
Gentlemen, start your engines. I'm taking Mature G's to Atlanta.
500?
Most unusual story in years.
It's a grand national race.
Brewster Baker, who's been off the circuit, has been burning up the smaller tracks for the last 4 months with the help of a pimp crew of kids.
What are we gonna do for a car?
I don't know, maybe we could steal one. God, I believe.
Well, it's your mind. Kenny Rogers in Six Pack. They're gonna steal your heart.
Love will turn you around.
Absolutely.
Directed by Daniel Petrie. He does lots of TV movies. He did Cocoon: The Return and 1994's Lassie. It's written by Mike Marvin, who is the director of The Wraith and the writer of Hot Dog, the movie. Also, Alex Matter did some of the script. It stars Kenny Rogers, Diane Lane, Aaron Gray, Barry Corbin, Terry Kaiser, Anthony Michael Hall, and Bob Hanna. It's about a race car driver who is driving, that's what race car drivers do, to a race in a motorhome with his race car on a trailer. His car gets stripped for parts, and he ends up with 6 orphan kids on his way to the race.
Wah, wah.
Kenny Rogers dropping in this summer. And next week, Dolly.
Absolutely.
So,
a completely forgettable but entirely harmless picture.
Yeah.
It has Diane Lane in a very early role. Was it her first role? As I click on Wikipedia,
it's quick. There's only like 1 or 2, might be her first theatrical release.
Yeah. And it's got. Who was she in this, by the way? Because I didn't even notice. Was she the female lead or was she one of the kids?
Diane Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah, she was one of the kids. She was the one.
Okay, she was the dog.
She was the older kid, and the one that Terry Kaiser was like, "Hey," when she dressed up. They were.
Yeah. So that's another thing that stuck out to me. Is like, wow, that would have gotten tagged by the problematic police in 2022.
That's why that scene is like, ooh, I don't know about
but
this.
You know, again, in the movie, it's fine. You know,
right.
It makes sense from a character point of view, and it's basically the movie is, you know, with it's basically the Boxcar Children starring Kenny Rogers.
It is. Oh my gosh.
And you know, it's my wife has always been very fond of that series. I have no strong opinions, but it's like, you know, let me put it this way: I like the end of the first book because they're not homeless anymore.
Yeah, I read.
Why are there sequels? I don't want them to keep being homeless. That's terrible.
Diane Lane made her debut in A Little Romance in 1979, so this is her third year in the biz.
Fair enough. And obviously, I'm noting my ignorance that I did not recognize her as the young teenage would-be mother figure.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's not particularly good.
No,
but it is a straight line drive for exactly what you expect it to be. Kenny Rogers is an agreeable screen presence.
Mm-hmm.
The film does its job in terms of establishing his sympathetic relationship with these kids. You do have a rooting interest in them both, quote unquote, winning. It's nothing that you haven't seen 100,000 times before and since. You know, most recently offhand, I think John Cena's Playing with Fire, which is about a fireman and his, you know, couple of other fire dudes that end up looking after some lost kids during a forest fire. I mean, it's harmless, but it's fun, by the way.
Yeah.
If you want something you can watch with your kids that's actually intended for kids as opposed to nostalgic adults, that's as good as any.
I think that, like, I was hoping some of the racing would look good or something, but
you know, this ain't Cars. This might have a slightly similar ending.
From the director of Cocoon, The Return, not the original.
Yes. Did you say he directed The Wraith, or did I miss?
No, the writer of this movie directed The Wraith.
Oh, because that caught my attention because that's the movie that basically invented a subgenre.
Yeah,
you know, that was, you know, The Crow and RoboCop before those films existed.
Exactly. Yeah, very much so.
But anyway, but no, I mean, it's if I were sitting there in a theater paying religious attention to this picture, yeah, I might have found it a little bit, you know, slow and indifferent or whatever. But I watched it casually while I was, you know, taking care of some adulting business, you know, watched it on a, you know, big screen while I was sitting on my laptop doing other stuff. And it was an agreeably pleasant, enjoyable picture.
Yeah.
And beyond that, I don't have much to say about it.
This feels like a movie primed to be on your, like, local affiliates movie package for like a Saturday afternoon.
Yes.
Like, this Saturday we got Kenny Rogers and Aaron Gray in Six Pack. Like,
oh yeah, it's in a time before there weren't so many tentpole franchise films that, you know, TNT and whatever could just run Marvel and Transformers and Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings movies nonstop, which I think is sort of an underspoken problem with the discourse these days. Is,
right.
You know, there's always one on, so you don't even have to.
It's our turn for the marathon.
Yeah. I think this is the kind of film that would, you know, you'd watch on a lazy Sunday afternoon on, you know, your local syndicate network television, you know, Channel 43 or whatever they call it, wherever.
Yeah, it's a movie that they might have made being like, okay, we might not make a couple bucks at the theater, but like the syndication for Kenny Rogers is going to go through the roof.
And it's certainly nothing that you have to trim much for television, if at all.
No.
Other than the run time, although I don't think it's particularly long. It's about 100 minutes or so. Yeah, about 108 minutes. So you either cut it to 90 or you let it run in a 2.5 hour slot. So yeah, I mean, it's the race footage is fine, partially because the end of it involves actual race footage from the 1982 NASCAR Coca-Cola. And it's funny when I'm watching it, you know, I have to sort of remind myself that it's not Jeff Bridges or Chris Christopherson that I'm watching. It's Kenny Rogers.
Yeah.
Because it's such a, what I consider the kind of role that they would play. Oh, or even, you know, Jeff Bridges or someone like that. You know, it is that kind of character role.
Right.
So,
yeah,
I guess if, you know, in 20 years, if Bradley Cooper wants to do a random remake of something.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't think people realize, like, Kenny Rogers, like, he was huge. He's kind of like a larger than life. Like everybody knew he would. People loved the shit out of the guy. Like this movie doesn't do well. Just a little spoiler to the box office, but like this probably was a surefire thing. Like we have Kenny Rogers. Oh, green light. Like he's agreed. But yeah, that's kind of a huge ordeal that I don't think people remember or realize how big the guy. There was Kenny and Dolly. Like they were the huge country stars become. And Chris Christopherson as well. Like he was.
Oh God, yes,
gigantic too. But yeah, and we have Aaron Gray here, who is right off of Buck Rogers being canceled. So like, because it got canceled, I finished it airing in 81, and this is like a movie jump off for her.
And things that I did not know, there actually are still Kenny Rogers chicken places in Asia.
I ate at one time because I had to, because of that Seinfeld episode, and we were vacationing. vacationing somewhere, and there was one across the street, and we're like, well, we have to.
I don't remember. I think I've had one over the years at least, because I mean, it's whatever. It's fine.
It's similar to Boston Market, I think, is what it was pretty much.
Yeah. And yeah, his big thing, I mean, other than the music, obviously, was he had a character called the Gambler that was in a series of TV movies.
Right. And he had TV specials too. Like that was a thing that they don't do anymore. But
again, this wasn't a huge hit, but it wasn't, nobody got murdered over it. And it was a situation where people would show up to see Kenny Rogers in a movie role playing somebody that's not Kenny Rogers.
Right.
But certainly isn't what I would consider against typecasting. It's not like he's a diabolical, hitman or anything.
No. It's harmless. It's good for his brand. Like just solid little family movie. And I feel like if you were like someone's like, if you were like a church or something, they'd probably have 6-pack on VHS sitting there. This
is one of his only 2 movies that he ever made.
Oh,
I mean, in theaters. Holy shit!
Oh wow,
that and Long Shot in 2001.
Oh geez.
Because I mean, he did a lot of TV work, tons of TV work.
I thought
I did not realize that.
I thought he was a much bigger cinematic presence than that.
No, so did I. Well, this is your one shot to see him in a movie. Then never mind. It's absolutely worth seeing.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because The Gambler was all TV movies.
Yeah, those were all TV movies. He did about a handful of those, give or take. Like 4, 5. He did 5 from 1983 to 1994.
Okay.
And other than that, it was just guest starring roles on this or that. Because again, he was a celebrity. Obviously, he was a huge music star, and that's where he made his fortune. But he was generally sort of stunt casting in television.
Yeah.
But anyway.
All right. Yeah. Well.
Thursday on Magnum, will a young girl and a sunken ship trap Magnum in a watery grave, or lead him to a mysterious treasure? Next, Simon and Simon head south of the border and right into big trouble as they search for a missing girl.
Aren't they cute?
Then, on Knots Landing,
Your specialty is wrecking homes.
will Abby destroy Val and Gary's marriage?
Are you and my husband having an affair?
I can have him anytime I want him.
Action and drama, Thursday.
Well, speaking of knowing when to fold them, we'll go on to the TV ratings for this week. The top 10 television shows as per the Nielsen ratings for this week in 1982. Number 1 was that All-Star baseball game I talked about. ABC got to air it. Number 2, Jefferson's on CBS. 3 is 60 Minutes on CBS. 4 is Trapper John MD on CBS. 5 is House Calls on CBS. 6 is MASH on CBS. 7 is Alice on CBS. 8 is Lou Grant on CBS. Number 9 is Magnum PI on CBS. And number 10 is Hill Street Blues on NBC. So
there you go. CBS
had 8 of the top 10 programs. It didn't have number 1. Didn't have number 10, but everything in between. That's insane. Overall, I went ahead. Overall, I had 14 of the top 20 shows for this week.
My God.
That's insane. Wow. That's incredible. I can't even think the dominance of CBS that it has been for the last couple, even did that. but I'm sure there's weeks when you put it to a microscope like we have been week to week, I'm sure it shows up like that. But that's just crazy. Lou Grant showing up. That's the first time that's popped in the top 10. Alice has been there before, but she doesn't live here anymore. Wow. But they have MASH, so they're always going to have a chance in 60 Minutes. Those are surefire things. But yeah, that is definitely that is what the TV was. So it was all about the All-Star Game in the summer, which, as we said, the National League won that game.
Ghosts, little spirits, or pixies? I don't believe in them.
All that ghost talk makes me nervous.
A Midsummer Night Sex Comedy.
I believe in science and sex and sex.
Can there be love without sex?
Sex alleviates tension and love causes it.
Nothing is real but experience.
It's all in the pectoral muscles. You should try it.
That which can be touched, felt,
Would you two prefer to be alone?
or in some scientific fashion proved.
That you were and had been sleeping with everyone.
Not everyone.
Uh-huh.
Well, maybe it was everyone.
Yeah.
A Midsummer Night Sex Comedy.
It's a little bit depraved.
How can it be disgusting? I don't have my clothes off yet.
The moment I smelled her, I loved her.
Yeah, well, smell someone else because she's taken.
To Leopold and Ariel, tomorrow they will be man and wife, forsaking all others till death do them part.
Maxwell!
Andrew! Leopold! Ah!
Don't shoot!
You're a man of reason. You're a pacifist. You're an animal.
A Midsummer Night Sex Comedy.
What a night.
I'll say.
Okay, we're moving on to our third movie of 4 this week. It is a Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy, which is directed by Woody Allen, written by Woody Allen, starring Woody Allen, Mia Farrow, Jose Ferrer, Julie Haggerty, Tony Roberts, and Mary Steenburgen. It's about a wacky inventor and his wife who invite 2 other couples for a weekend party at a romantic summer house in the 1900s countryside. Folks, this is the film where Woody and Mia met.
Oh, Diane Keaton was busy.
Kind of that. This is, also you got this is Mary Steenburgen on her rise, and this is Julie Haggerty's follow-up to Airplane. It's her first movie after that. So he nabbed her after that, but because
Diane Keaton was promoting Reds.
Yeah,
which she had made with Warren Beatty in 1981.
Yep.
So he brings up Mia Farrow, and the rest is history.
Which, if looking at
13 movies they made together, holy crap!
Yeah, looking at Woody and Mia on film, it's almost like a baton was passed from Keaton to Farrow, because they have that same kind of chemistry and the same kind of back and forth that works so well with Keaton. I think Keaton and Allen are better. I think that's one of the best comedy team ups of all time. That never gets brought up when you're talking about like Laurel and Hardy and all that. I'm like, Keaton and Allen have something very special.
Yes,
and it didn't get. There was more in the 70s, but it never got to a point where there's just like, can we stop it? But yeah. So this one is Woody Allen. He's coming off. This is an interesting spot here because he's coming off of Stardust Memories, which at the time was not, well, I think it's one of his best. I think Stardust Memories might be my second favorite Woody Allen film because I think it's just brilliant. Even though he says it's not about him, it's fucking about him. Like it's his 8.5. And it's brilliant, and it's got like some of his best filmmaking, some of his best performance, and he was raked through the coals for it because critics were mad because he thought they were coming after him, or he was coming after them. Yeah, and all this, and the joke in that movie is that everybody likes his stuff. They're like, I like the old funny stuff better because he was turning.
So this is smack dab in Woody Allen's serious phase,
right? So
where he wants respect, damn it.
Mm-hmm, and he bounced to this another stupid. He was like, fine, you want one of these? Here you go. But he'd find a way to be funny in a different fashion with Zelig the following year. But yeah, this was kind of his fine kind of movie.
I'll give you your farce. Here's another bananas.
Yeah.
It's funny, the relation to Stardust Memories. For the record, I think Sam Levinson's Malcolm Maria is very funny.
Mm-hmm.
That's another situation where it's like, okay, just because the lead character is expressing dumb and or incorrect or unpopular things does not mean the movie is endorsing those opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Especially when you have a Zendaya basically calling him an idiot for 95 minutes. I don't know if you've seen that one or not. It's on Netflix early last year.
Right. I wanted to watch that, and I didn't get to that one.
No, it's not appointment viewing, but it was another one where it's like the critical establishment thought he was like took everything about that film very seriously.
I remember the discourse. Yeah.
It's like, this movie's funny. And it's only funny if you're, it's funnier if you are a critic and you're aware of what he's nipping on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, yeah, some of it's aimed at us, but I think it's pretty good humored. But anyway, whatever. This one is fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was never one of my favorite. I'm not a Woody Allen expert for the record, but this was never one of my favorites of his. I think it's for one thing, I mean, this isn't even a criticism. It feels like a stage play.
Yeah,
it's very much a slamming doors farce.
It takes all place in a house, basically, too. So it could easily translate.
Bloomhouse presents Woody Allen's Amid Snow. And I think, it's funny. This is one where it's like, if you're a kid first discovering Woody Allen, I don't know if kids do that now for obvious reasons, but it's like, oh, this one sounds salacious.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
It's just like, because he's got
I don't know if it's PG. I mean, there is sexual content, but it's certainly not it's not a particularly grotesque picture.
No, it's probably PG. But it's just like everything you always wanted to know about sex, but we're afraid to ask, and you're like, oh, this is gonna be a banger. So
no, it's fun, and it's fun to see these actors in the relative start of their careers, give or take. Mm-hmm. Especially, obviously, Judy Haggerty and Mary Steenburgen.
It is PG. Yeah.
And I think, absent its somewhat salacious title and its origins as a remake of a Bergman film, I think,
or something. Yeah.
Let me see. I should know this. I do think it's one of his just sort of it's there movies. In between, Annie Hall, Manhattan, Stardust Memories, which are just bangers.
Yeah, loosely based on Smiles of a Summer's Night.
His mid 80s run of Crimes and Misdemeanors and Radio Day and Hannah and Her Sisters and what have you. So this one's sort of just there.
Yeah, it's fine, and if it's one of your earliest Woody Allen films
of 3-star sex farce with funny people in a single location, constantly debating whether to screw each other. There's obviously entertainment value in that.
Right. And there's some of the like Woody tropes that if you like, they're here. Like him and Tony Roberts have great rapport. If you liked what they were doing in Annie Hall, they pick up right here with it. So
but you're right in the sense that I think it was sort of a screw you from him to people that wanted him to cut it out with the serious stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's to his detriment because, generally speaking, when you make a movie for spite, it doesn't work out well.
Yeah.
There are some exceptions, but none come to mind off the top of my head. I'm sure there are some exceptions.
I think a lot of this is like, he could do a movie like this in his sleep. But so he decided to challenge himself by setting it in a period area. Like I think this is in the sleepwalking is kind of still there, but there is some stuff where he's challenging himself. But there are some there's some more clever cinematography than you'd expect or maybe notice on the first watch with this movie. There was some stuff that I was like, damn, that's kind of a brilliant shot, or that's kind of a nice staging, stuff like that. So he's challenging himself there, but I don't think this is a movie he wants to I think it's people he wants to work with. And maybe this is because the guy makes a movie a year till now. And like, I think this is just kind of him like working things out, trying to find something more challenging while trying to challenge himself with a like sleepwalk picture. So but it's fun. If Mary Steenburgen's fun, like everybody's fun. Like the people you see in this movie go, I know that person. You're gonna like what they do here. But But and Mia makes a solid debut here, being the Diane Keaton stand-in, basically. And she works. I mean, she'll get better throughout the rest of the Woody movie. Like, I don't think she's bad here, but she'll find her own footing rather than just being a Diane Keaton substitute.
So yeah, I think now it exists more as a historical touchstone / time capsule than one of a must-see Woody Allen picture.
Right. But yeah, this is it is what it is. It's not one of his best, but he's here in the summer with a Midsummer. He's in the middle of the summer with a Midsummer Night's sex comedy. So, but yeah, I would check out the one before this one and the one after it with more highly recommends than this one in the middle. But if you're that person that just likes that early 70s stuff of his, here you go. This is like one last hurrah at that, honestly.
Yes,
because I don't think he makes another one like that. So
no, I mean Small Time Crooks, maybe
there are wells he digs back to, but going back to the 70s is when he does it, because like faux documentaries is one, like infidelity dramas, and
true, people who accidentally get away with a crime.
Yeah, and the one before it, Stardust Memories, that is a well he goes back to, like he just did with Rifkin's Festival, which I called Senior Dust Memories, but yeah, that's a well he'll go back to. But this is that last, maybe that's what the significance of this one. This is his last time doing one of those Love and Death, sleeper bananas type movies.
Counting down the week's hottest hits, and the countdown doesn't stop till we reach the top.
So moving on to Casey Kasem's top 40, the top 10 this week. We have number 10. We have a new one jumping in, Caught Up in You by 38 Special. Number 9, Only the Lonely by The Motels. Number 8, Tainted Love by Soft Cell. Number 7, Love's Been a Little Bit Hard on Me by Juice Newton. Number 6, Hold Me by Fleetwood Mac jumps in here. Number 5, Let It Whip by the Daz Band. Number 4, Eye of the Tiger, Survivor. And number 3, John Cougar. Not quite earning the melon cap yet. Hurts So Good. Number 2, Rosanna by Toto. And number 1, once again, it's third week, Don't You Want Me by The Human League. So, and if you notice, Ebony and Ivory dropped like a rock. It's gone. It is out of there. And that was dominating our charts for a bit, but it's gone now. So that's the Casey Kasem top 40 here. Holding kind of strong, a lot of same, a couple new ones, but we'll continue to monitor how that goes.
For the next 12 months, you will learn to hate my guts. I may break some of you, but those of you who survive will be the best doctors in the state.
It's the daily drama of life and death in a big city hospital.
Don't tell anybody that Dr. Buck fixed your duck.
ABC Motion Pictures and 20th Century Fox present Young Doctors in Love. A comedy with stripers, strippers, virgins, surgeons.
If you plan to remove the appendix, you will have to break the skin.
Punks, drunks, dancing, and romancing.
You call that sex? Now let's try it again.
Thrills, chills, pills, and spills.
Now she's in somebody else's bed.
Small guys.
Back on your box.
Fall guys. Famous faces.
I don't like the way your husband looks.
I don't either, but he's good to the children.
Car chases.
It's gonna be a car chase. Cars locked, no chase.
Long shots.
Stephanie?
And short tempers.
Okay, we'll need an anesthesiologist.
Hope. And stethoscopes.
Burns.
Hemorrhoids.
Automatic bed. And newlyweds.
I'm married. Are you happily married?
Guys who are sleazy.
Show me where your mother lives. Yeah, right there. Come on, yeah.
And girls who are easy.
I looked in your mouth, checked your breasts, probed every part of your body.
What's wrong with me?
How should I know? I'm a lawyer.
Young Doctors in Love.
Get out of the way, you sick...
They fly. They cry. They slide. They collide. They're all here. But they're not all there.
Foster! Shoulder!
It's Young Doctors in Love. There is no cure.
And now to our last feature, our main event here, Young Doctors in Love, directed by Gary Marshall, written by Michael Elias and Rich Eustace, starring Michael McKean, Sean Young, Kyle T. Hefner, Crystal Bernard, Rick Overton, Gary Friedkin, Ted McGinley, Saul Rubinek, Harry Dean Stanton, Pamela Reed, Dabney Coleman, Michael Richards, Taylor Negron, and Hector Elizondo, with a cameo by Demi Moore, right? That was in there. It is a spoof on hospital soap operas with a few gangsters thrown in. A new batch of interns begins at City Hospital. This is a feature film debut of Gary Marshall, who does Overboard, Beaches, Pretty Woman, Frankie and Johnny, Runaway Bride, Princess Diaries, Raising Helen. He came from being a TV writer from some of the most golden age classics, and this is his debut.
This is a fascinating time capsule.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say the movie's good. Very frankly, I think it falls apart in the last 20, 25 minutes or so.
Mm-hmm.
But I was riveted. Just, again, part of it is seeing these people that I think of as sort of, character actors and whatever. I mean, this is, seeing Taylor Negron as a young, handsome heartthrob is sort of almost shocking to me. Poor guy died 7 years ago. But I digress.
But he also has this thing that is still there in the 80s. Like he was always played these sex obsessed guys.
Yeah.
And it was here. Kind of.
And he's always got a certain edge to him. And of course it was, neat seeing Michael McKean as a heartthrob.
Right.
I mean, he's always a handsome guy. That's not to say he's not, but obviously because of how old I am, I tend to associate him with, the Christopher Guest, comic farce stuff. And then, his elder statesman TV roles over the years.
He landed himself a Ned O'Toole, so you got to be a handsome dude.
Oh, yeah. He wins. And then, of course, you have Sean Young, who is on a roll as, frankly, the dream girl in several films.
This is her year after Stripes. So this is her her projects that follow Stripes. So
and she follows us up with Dune and Baby, The Secret of the Lost Legend, Under the Biltmore Clock, and No Way Out, which is ironically the movie that most people associate I'm so excited with.
Right. You were saying McKean, like at this point with McKean, though, he is a regular on Laverne and Shirley. We are 2 years away from Spinal Tap. Like
fair.
It's crazy.
And it's funny. It took me a while to realize that this was like a wannabe Airplane, because while there's obviously farce and comedy, by today's standards, it's almost low key to the point where I just thought I was watching, a sloppy, rough draft of Scrubs. And obviously there are jokes here that don't make sense if the movie is even trying to take place in the real world. There's a running gag about a mafia, a mob boss that they keep trying to murder.
Yes.
There's a character that disguises himself as a woman in order to end to the mob, to the mob boss. And that actually, ironically, is handled with a certain amount of sensitivity. Non-judgment.
Yes.
It's not played for laughs, at least in a conventional sense.
Right.
And there are a couple Looney Tunes type violent jokes in this. I think a character gets blown up by a piece of dynamite that's stuck under his ass. But that's sort of the last 20 minutes where the film turns, I would say, headlong into farce. And I guess by modern standards, some of the gender relations are a little problematic, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But again, it's 1982.
Yeah.
I do, the film is sympathetic to union/labor struggles in a way that was more conventional in a less politicized time. One of the subplots involves the nurses going on strike, justifiably, probably.
Right.
Pamela Reed shows up in a very early role as sort of an ugly duckling / swan nurse character.
Right. Yeah.
I have no objection to that whatsoever. By the way, if I may be salacious, Sean Young, as a doctor wearing glasses, awesome. You can keep Blade Runner. I'll take young doctors in love.
There you go.
But yeah, I mean, it's not a good movie, and I can understand why it did not get good reviews when it came out, because it I think part of it is just I can't decide how far toward the airplane shtick to bend this film.
Yeah,
it kind of wants to have its cake and eat it too, where it wants to be a very broad farce, almost a spoof of General Hospital and other primetime medical shows, but it also wants to have a relative human drama that takes its story seriously.
Well, the problem is when you're spoofing it, you can't look like a movie when you're doing it. You'd have to look like shot on video television for soap operas at the time, or else, or it's not. You're not getting it, and some of the airplane stuff when it does show up feels kind of weird. Like they go to the cemetery at one point and there's a Carrie gag there where there's a hand sticking out of the grave and it says Carrie, and I'm like, okay, that's a nice little gag there, but I'm like, they're littered throughout in a weird way that just it doesn't feel with the flow of things how they're doing
there's a
it.
very early E.T. joke in this picture. They claim that they were the first movie to make a reference to E.T., which makes sense. The movie only it came out like a month after E.T., so that's pretty impressive.
You can go back, reshoot something quickly, and get it in there.
And there are very early appearances by, as you said, Debbie Moore. Michael Richards shows up very briefly, and as required by law, because it's a Gary Marshall film, Hector Elizondo is in this.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I've been talking enough. I'll let you talk.
Oh, well,
holy shit, Richard Dean Anderson is in this? I need to watch this again.
I didn't see that. I know
he's the drug dealer. Holy crap.
McGinley is in it, but
yes.
they do nothing with him really. I thought Harry Dean Stanton, this is a interesting, like, he's wacky, goofy.
Yeah, very against type for him.
Yeah, very against type, and he's having fun here. Dabney Coleman he's got a beard. I will say, like, this movie, I thought it was a pretty fun. It's a kind of pretty fun, goofy movie. Delivers like a solid level that you see once, you chuckle a bunch, and then you move on with life. And then it's something you're like, oh, I think I remember that movie. It's like I went to the movies to laugh for a weekend, and I got this, and it did it okay. Like, that's pretty much what it is. I was fascinated with it though, watching that. I didn't know this movie, and that this was a thing that existed. It was interesting. It was not what I thought. Like, I didn't realize the airplane, that they were trying for probably an airplane till you said something just now, and now that makes a lot of sense. It's set up in sketch scenarios, but not, which is weird.
Yeah,
like, that's kind of hard to put this kind of, but it's an easy watch for as much as it's not a good movie, and a lot of it might be looking back and seeing people now that now back then. But yeah, it's I thought it was funny enough, and laughed a good deal, fascinated a bit, but I don't think I'm ever going to return to it. But yeah, I also want to point out it's written by the two guys who created Head of the Class. So very, very happy about that. One of which wrote for Mary Tyler Moore, Dick Van Dyke, Bill Cosby. And the other wrote North Dallas 40 and the Dean Martin Show. So not quite your Zuckers, but Head of the Class is pretty cool. There was a urine gag that was pretty funny that I felt like needed a better payoff. Like, it was working, and then it was like there was no payoff. It's so like Harry Dean Stanton has this urine sample, because we can't just tease that and then not let people listening know. He has this urine sample, and he says he dips his finger in it, and then he tastes his finger, and he talks about what is in it, or what's in the urine to analyze or diagnose something. And then he passes to Michael McKean. Michael McKean dips his fingers in the urine, and he's like, you need to pay attention. I put my fingers in the urine and put the other in my mouth. He's like, well, Michael McKean goes, well, if you would have tasted the urine, you would have noticed blah, 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 blah. And he goes, wait a minute, what? And he takes the urine and he drinks it. And he's like, what? It just tastes like bitter urine. He's like, ha, I tricked you. You didn't notice that I switched my hands. And then it just doesn't pay off from there very well.
No,
there should have been something. There should have been something later where someone accidentally drank urine and then noticed a problem with a person or something. There should have been some better payoff to that whole.
You're right, because it's a gross out gag that sort of changes to a character beat instead, where he jumps in to prevent Sean Young from drinking at the last minute.
Right.
And that sort of is kind of the start of their relationship.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating picture for a number of reasons, and it's compulsively watchable.
Yeah.
Both as a time capsule and just as a movies, an old movie.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I do think once the medical melodrama gets ridiculous toward the end, in the last 20 minutes, it kind of combusts. But for an hour 15 or hour 10, it's pretty good.
Yeah. It's not bad. It's definitely a fast. Like if you haven't heard of it and you're listening to this episode this week, I would say this one doesn't hurt to check out. You can, if that full movie is on YouTube, like legit
with captions,
like legit, like here's a free movie on YouTube. It's got ads. So I believe it's a legit listing.
I hope so. That's where I watched it.
That's where I watched it too. So yeah, Young Doctors in Love. Let's move over to the box office, see how these movies fared this week. So Scott, over to you with the 82 box office.
July 16th.
Yes, July 16th.
The number one movie of the week for the 6th weekend in a row was E.T., the Extraterrestrial.
Stop going to E.T., folks. See other movies.
They are seeing other movies.
They are.
The
That's
80s.
the funny. Yep, this is the 80s.
It went up 1.6%, adding 107 screens, earning $13 million in 1,505 screens for a $129.4 million domestic gross. Obviously, it would eventually make, I think, what was the original? I know 359 was after the 85 re-release, so I think it was like summary. Excuse me. Why is this not coming up? Oh no, it was 359, counting the 1985 reissue, and then it would make another 70 million in 2002, which would push over the 400 million mark. Anyway, the number 2 for the weekend was the re-release of Raiders of the Lost Ark, which we talked about on last week's show. Spoiler, pretty good movie. It would earn $4.347 million in 1,330 screens. So that would mean that Steven Spielberg would have the top 2 movies of the weekend. And hell, Poltergeist is 7th this weekend, so he had 3 of the top 10. Take that, Tom Holland.
Right, yeah.
Let's see. It would Raiders of the Lost Ark would make another $21 million in that reissue, which would bring its domestic total from about $223 million. And then it would be re-released again in 1983, where it would make another 11 million. And then it would be released to IMAX in late 2012, where it would make another $3.3 million.
So Indiana Jones or Raiders of the Lost Ark came out in 81, 82, and 83. And then Temple in 84.
Yeah. That tracks. And then the number 3 movie is Young Doctors in Love.
Haha, did you guess, folks? Did you guess that would be the number 1 this week? Or of the new ones? I didn't. I looked up and I was like, oh, all right.
Well, to be fair, Woody Allen's movies are usually not blockbusters. Nonetheless, $4.2 million on 709 screens. That's actually a pretty solid 5,932 per screen average. The film cost, I think, about $7 million. Is that right? Yeah, about $7 million. And it would eventually make 30.6. So that's a solid hit.
It's a forgotten hit. That's honestly, I was surprised. Well, not surprised that it went in the top 10, but where it went in the top 10 is where I was like, oh, snap.
Again, it's another case of, a movie like Conan the Barbarian, which spawned a franchise and blah, blah, blah. Everybody talked about it. It made $39 million. So the movie only made a little bit more than Young Doctors in Love. Going back to something I complain about a lot, which is that Hollywood and pop culture pays attention to certain hits more than other hits, even if the numbers don't necessarily justify it.
Yeah, like
so
we could have got another comedy from this team or another Michael McKean, Sean Young romantic comedy or something.
Yeah. The example I always give is that, in the summer of 2008, Iron Man makes $585 million and changes the face of Hollywood as we know it. Mamma Mia makes $609 million and nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, Mamma Mia made only $5 million less overseas that summer than The Dark Knight.
Yeah.
And give or take $5 million less than Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull.
Yeah.
But nothing.
Nothing. Well, we got Mamma Mia 2.
From a male director, by the way.
Yeah.
Fun fact. But anyway, number 4 was Tron, which dropped a reasonable 23% in weekend 2 for a $3.6 million gross, an $11 million 10-day total. Rocky 3 Will Not Die.
No.
Earning another $3.6 million, 19%.
It's nice to see Eye of the Tiger and it in the charts right now at the same time, because Eye of the Tiger it just started climbing. Where we're talking.
And if I recall, that song was actually written for Rocky 3.
Yeah, it was Rocky 3. Yep. Yes. Yep.
No, I thought I was it written specifically for Rocky 3 or was it something else? Okay,
no,
for some reason I thought it was a standalone song was appropriate, but never mind.
Nope.
Anyway, you can cut that part out because I sound stupid. I'm kidding, or not. 86 million after 8 weekends. Firefox, Clint Eastwood's super jet fighter movie.
It's doing pretty good. Yeah.
2.67 million after 5 weekends, 35.4 million. Poltergeist still sticking around. 7 weekends in, has made 2.6 million, dropping just 18% with $47.4 million. See, again, not to be a broken record, but back then movies stuck around.
Yeah.
You had 20%, 25%, 30% drops on the regular for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Midsummer Night's Sex Comedy opened in 501 theaters for a $2.5 million opening weekend, which off the top of my head was probably pretty good for a Woody Allen movie.
Probably.
It would eventually make $9 million domestic. And
probably cost like $3.
Yeah,
so,
pretty much.
Yeah.
Star Trek or Annie would make 2.2 million in weekend 9. I think it was in limited release for its first 2 weekends, if I recall, for a $35 million total. Star Trek 2, The Wrath of Khan would make $2 million at 7th weekend, 26% drop. But still, I mean, comparatively speaking, it was falling a little bit faster than the other stuff because then it was somewhat of a fan-driven property.
It is, but it's also got more sort of direct competition for its viewership. Like E.T. and Tron will keep the repeaters from going to Star Trek 2.
You are correct. And again, it's a hit by any stretch of the imagination. It costs like what, $15 million to make. It's going to do 79 domestic.
Mm-hmm.
It did save the franchise without any way, in every way, shape, or form.
Mm-hmm.
And then in 11th place, Six Pack, a film that made $1.95 million in 504 screens and would top out with $20 million.
Oh shit!
Wow, never mind. It was a hit.
Oh, wow.
I stand corrected.
Damn.
Good on you, Kenny Rogers.
Yeah, Kenny. Hollywood didn't learn. They didn't make another Kenny Rogers movie.
They did not. How could you not find a spot for him in, Smokey the Man at 12?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cannonball Run 4.
Blade Runner was in 12th. Secret of Nymph in 13th place after weekend 3. It was pretty much DOA.
Yep.
Sword and the Sorcerer Cannot Be Killed.
No.
By the way, I finally watched that movie this week.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting.
We may talk about it later on.
We might at the end. I need to watch Porky's between now and August.
Yeah. You might want to donate to the possible Patreon we're setting up for this. And you might get it. So we'll see.
Ooh, interesting.
You might. So
And finally, in 15th place, John Carpenter's The Thing, which opened poorly and did not hold on, dropping 44% in its fourth weekend for a $1 million total and a $13.8 million cube.
It had sat there consistently. This is the first weekend that thing dropped. But it just didn't have enough. It didn't open big enough. Yeah, that was the problem there.
Legs are great when you actually open.
Yeah.
Great legs with a bad opening is just usually adding insult to injury.
Very true. But
Unless you're the greatest showman, but dear God, that's a once in a generation phenomenon.
Yeah. So yeah, this is a little bit of shaken up top 10 compared to what we've seen. The night Star Trek dropping and Young Doctors in Love opening pretty high, which you wouldn't expect. That's the surprise for me. It's like, oh, people wanted to see Young Doctors in Love. Something happened there that people went out to see it. I mean, granted, E.T.'s there, but I mean, how many times, here's the thing too. How many times are parents getting to see the movies they want to see and just dumping the kids at E.T.?
Absolutely. I mean, it's, and I talk about this a lot, but the comparison of, how things used to be, in the proverbial olden days and, March or April of 1990, stereotypically speaking, the men would see The Hunt for Red October, the women would see Pretty Women, and the kids would see Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And all three of those were huge hits. And today, everybody goes to Ninja Turtles.
Yeah. Yeah. Sad. But
and that's basically the weekend movies.
All right. So that'll do it for this weekend. That was July 16th through 18th. Scott, as always, thank you for joining in, providing your expertise, talking these movies of 82 that we do. But before we sign out, let people know where they can keep up with you.
Forbes.com, the ticket booth. I'm still there. Google some variation of that. I'm on Twitter, unless Elon Musk buys it and destroys it by the time this podcast airs, at scottmendelson.com. They're just at Scott Mendelson. Yeah. And that's about it.
All right. And I'm on Twitter and Instagram at Brandon4KUH2. Tune in next week as the horrors take down E.T. Garp tells us about the world. Scott Baio zaps us up. But are you up to the challenge? Till then, stay filmed.
The summer of 82 at 40.
Thank you for listening. The Brandon Peters Show is a Creative Zombie Studios production. Produced by Brad Shoemaker and Brandon Peters. Written and edited by Brandon Peters. Announcer vocals by Jessica Alsman. Theme song by Metavari. Web design and show art by Brad Shoemaker with Brandon Peters. All music and clips featured in the episode are property of their respective studios, and no infringement is intended. The Summer of 82 at 40 and News of the Moment themes by Pres Maxson. Additional information on this and other episodes at thebrandonpetershow.com. For any inquiries, press opportunities, or sponsorship, contact mail at thebrandonpetershow.com. The show is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or anywhere podcasts are found.